for everyone here, how we're going to do this is we're going to talk about the three main quicknesses at the moment: Firebrand, Chrono, and Scrapper, and we're going to do Firebrand first. So what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about quickness and why it's the most important boon in the game. Because quickness makes the game much more fun. Because playing without quickness is awful. And there are three main classes that we can use. So Firebrand, Chrono, and Scrapper. They all provide things, and we'll talk about them in a bit more detail. But quickness is super important because it makes all our attacks 33% faster, and who doesn't want that? Because if you go in open world and play without quickness, it's painful, but I only play on my Reaper, so I wouldn't know the pain. So let's start with Firebrand. Okay, so on Firebrand, your main source of quickness are your mantras, so these two, and your shout. So you've got your heal mantra, which generates quickness, your quickness mantra, which, as it says, gives quickness, and then your shout, which is also a quickness. So that is how a quickness Firebrand generates quickness. And then you've got tomes. So Firebrand has three different tomes. Your tome 1, which is your DPS tome, which is very, very, very powerful. Your tome 2, which is your heal tome, which gives water fields, gives your tome 5, and that skill is very nice as well, and can generate some regen and stuff as well. And your tome 3 is Ice Utility Tome, can give a bit of toughness. If you use it at the wrong time or misuse it, then it can also be detrimental to your team, but if you use it properly, it can be very useful. And then you've got your axe and your scepter, which are just the standard DPS weapons that you use there. But for Firebrand, the main source of quickness generation are going to be from your utility skills, mainly these three ones, which you will have every single time as Quickness Firebrand. Because quickness on Firebrand is quite tight, because it's not like the other quickness classes. Sweet. So we're going to go through the Firebrand traits. So in the build, there are three trait lines you use, and you will be keeping them the whole time. So the first one in the main Firebrand trait line is Liberator's Vow. So as well as your utility skills, these two traits, Liberator's Vow and Stalwart Speed, are where your quickness comes from. So every 7 seconds. So this is the internal cooldown of it. So when you use your heal skill, you grant allies quickness, but you're gonna have to be careful of the 7-second internal cooldown on both Stalwart Speed and Liberator's Vow, because with the quickness mantra, you can press that 3 times, and you'll give however many 15 seconds of quickness or something like that. But if you use your heal skill 3 times in a row, you will not give that much quickness because it will only trigger once. So you have to time your quickness mantra every 7 seconds to make sure you're giving out quickness, because unless you need to give Aegis, but that's only a specific. You got to wait with that heal mantra. And then you've got Lawmaster, which is just a DPS in gain. And then you have the Radiant trait line. This is pretty much a big DPS trait line. You've got Right Hand Strength, which is a damage increase. It's the best choice out of those three. And Radiant Fire, which is very important for your station. It's one of your most important DPS traits. It will proc your Torch for twice, which we'll get into that a bit later. And Amplified Wrath, which is just another DPS modifier. Basically means you help cap out your burning and the damage it does, which is big because a lot of your damage is burning damage. And finally, Virtues, which is also a DPS trait line as well, because the Master of Consecrations means your Purging Flame skill, one of this skill over here, which is one of your highest DPS skills, has a longer duration, which means more damage. And then Glacial Heart, which is a bit more damage, and when you have Sanctuary as well, Glacial Heart does a decent bit of damage. And another DPS trait, which is more burning, because we want everything to burn. So on Firebrand, you're literally going to run the standard Snorker's gear. So what it says on Conde Quickness Firebrand, you're going to be running that. Pretty much no change to the gear. And they run Firebrand runes because it's a pretty aggressive build in terms of stats on the build. It's all Vipers, so the Firebrand runes help upkeep the quickness with the little boon duration and the increased quickness duration. And since it's only the source of boon duration you have is your runes, it's kind of tight. But as long as you're using your heal mantra every 7 seconds and your quickness mantra off cooldown, and your Feel My Wrath off cooldown as well, you should be good. And I see a lot of trainees and people doing this. You need to use the Fire Meat Chili, because that is more of a DPS increase than using the ascended condition damage food. Because on Quickness Firebrand, your burning duration is not capped out. So the Snowcrest build uses I think 6 or 8 expertise infusions to cap out burning, but you don't need it as a starter. It's not unless you're min-maxing, but you need that 15% burning duration increase with the Fire Meat Chili because your burning is your main source of damage, and if you're not capping out with 100% of burning, then you're wasting a lot of damage for not of a good reason, basically. Sweet. And then the utility skills are really simple as well. You've basically got 4 utility skills that you never really drop in most cases. So your heal mantra and your quick mantra and your shout, you're basically never going to drop them if you're just QFB. If you're pure QFB, you're going to need those 3 to upkeep the quickness. And they do other nice things like healing and Aegis and Might and Fury as well. So incredible utility from all 3 of those skills that you never really want to drop. And Purging Flames is your big DPS utility, and it's very, very nice to have. As long as you hit that, then it's very nice damage and a lot of burning ticks as well. And then your last utility skill is Signet, which is just a passive increase of condition damage. And this is a skill you would most likely be dropping when you want to swap utilities for specific bosses. So some of the utility variations you can have are Sanctuary, Stand Your Ground, and Wall of Reflection. So Sanctuary is like a bubble that you place, and it is massive bar damage because the Virtue's trait means that Sanctuary lasts 2 seconds longer, and then the Virtue's trait also has Glacial Heart, which means Sanctuary does more CC. So it can do around 1,050 break bar damage. Bear in mind, it takes about 6-7 seconds for all of that to happen, so it's not particularly fast. But on bosses like Severe, where it's very, very good value on Severe, probably the most out of the 3, but if you have slow CC on Samurog or Sloth, then Sanctuary is really, really helpful as well. And you'd be dropping the Signet for that as well. And then another utility skill you can take is Stand Your Ground. So we'll drop the Signet again, and Stand Your Ground is very nice 10-man stability. And for the Cairn Greens, you can use Stand Your Ground on QFB. For the Gorseval Slam, if you're not Aegising it, you can also Aegis that if you have 2 5-rounds, which is really nice. And Q2 and Sloth as well. Sloth for the after the break when he fears us, and Kadim for when he destroys the pylons, and we need some stability. Your Stand Your Ground is 10-man, and Firebrand doesn't lose that much from dropping the Signet. It's a bit of a DPS decrease, but having stability on all these fights is more of an increase for the squad, not having to move, which is really good. And last but not least is Wall of Reflection. So it's for big reflects, so especially useful on Matthias, where he has a bubble where you can reflect it with the Wall of Reflection. You can just place it on top of him, and it's really easy. And you don't want to use it on Ken unless you want to draw some people. You can put it in the middle of Ken and knock everyone about. But those are your 3 main utility skills on QFB that you would swap out for different encounters. Sweet. So weapons and basics on the class. So you're going to be running Axe and Scepter, and that is not something you're going to be changing because those are the 2 best in slot weapons, as well as your Torch. That I've not mentioned it, but those are the 3 weapons that you need for Quickness Firebrand. They are super useful. So, Axe auto attack chain. So the 3rd Axe auto is a massive DPS increase. So the 1st and 2nd, if you do the 2nd Axe auto, you always want to complete the Axe auto chain. In loads of logs, you see people not doing the 3rd auto chain, and you're losing a lot of burning damage from that. It's a much, much bigger increase than the Axe 1 and 2 autos. And then Purging Flames, you basically want to be using that off cooldown. It's big DPS, and you want to be using it as often as you can. The more you can use it, the more damage you get. So Torch 4 is arguably one of the most damaging skills on Firebrand, because you have that trait Radiant Fire, where it's at. So Radiant Fire. So every 10 seconds, you gain a Zealot's Flame, which is your Torch 4, and you critically hit an enemy. And that means that Torch 4 skill is arguably one of your most important skills. That means you get 2 charges of Torch 4. So you use Torch 4, and then you get to throw 2 flames at the target. And when you throw those 2 flames, you want to be getting both of them together. You get them in pairs, and you want to try and keep them consistently lined up in pairs. So then it makes it easier for the rotation, since those 2 are really important for some nice damage. And Scepter 2 and Axe 2, which are your symbols. So on Fire, Guardian has symbols, and those symbols are ticking damage on the floor, and they do quite a bit, and you always want to be getting as many symbols as you possibly can. And get that F1 term down, so that 2, when you go into term, you do 2, 4, 5, 1, 2. on the 5-page rotation. And that turn 1 is a massive DPS increase, and you want to be using turn 1 as often as you can off cooldown. And one thing I haven't mentioned here is Torch 5. So you use Torch 5 usually after you come out of turn. And what a lot of people do with Torch 5 is they cancel it just before the end. And the burning from Torch 5 comes just at the end of the animation. So you'll see the bar charge up, and then once the bar charges up, there'll be another tiny little bar that comes up after. The tiny little bar that comes up after is the burning. And lots of people cancel that Torch 5, which means they miss a lot of the burning, which is not very good. And you miss a lot of DPS by doing that. It's something really simple that a lot of people do. So overall, in general, Firebrand is super useful because it has 3 mantras in the shout, and at the start of any fight, you basically want to be using your 3 quickness mantras, charges, and your elite mantra, elite shout, and then 1 use of your heal mantra as well. And then you want to be using your heal mantra roughly every 7 seconds, but anytime I get another charge of my heal mantra, I just use it, and because the charge takes about 10 seconds, 12 seconds. So you know that once a new charge has appeared, you know you're definitely going to get the Liberator's Vow proc there as well to make sure you can upkeep quickness. And Quickness Firebrand does a lot of damage as well. So the bench for it is about 30k, I think, the solo bench. And then obviously Ashes is another DPS increase if you've got allies. So on most bosses, Quickness Firebrand does a lot of damage, and it can compete with below average DPS classes. And it provides a lot of utility as well. So if you haven't got another Fury source, like a Druid or an Elite Banner or any other class that provides enough Fury, Axe 2 and Filmorath can cover the Fury for a subgroup really easily. And Firebrand can provide Aegis, which is very, very broken. Some bosses like Gorsov and Deimos, it's super useful having Aegis, and it's just a good skill to have in general. Helps keep you alive in many, many cases. And it's a pretty standard build, pretty simple to gear, and not that difficult to play either. And it can provide a lot of utility with its turn 2 and 3. Turn 2 can heal up, and turn 3 can give protection and stability and toughness if you use it, as long as you're using it properly. And you've got a lot of CC with Sanctuary and stability with Stand Your Ground as well. So it's a very versatile class that's very good at its job. Sweet, so that is